With players now attempting the Ghost of the Deep solo run, frustrations have come from the community regarding this dungeon. However, I'm here to share some tips and tricks that I used in my solo run of this dungeon. I've spent a majority of the time since the dungeon's release understanding the mechanics and strategy crafting to put together what I believe are some of the best strategies to take this dungeon down easily. I do want to preface that before we get into this video that this guide will not explain mechanics in depth, as that's what my Ghost of the Deep dungeon guide is for. Today's guide will simply provide the tips and strategies that I found the most effective when I did my attempt. So without wasting any more time, let's get into the guide. I want to dive into what class I was using and some general tips for this dungeon. The class that you will play in this solo will set you up for either an easy solo or a brutal nightmare. I ran a few different options for this dungeon and I found Solar Titans to be the best class by a long shot. The Bonk Hammer build survivability is unmatched, not even mentioning the ridiculous damage it can do against the two bosses. I put the build that I used on screen now so you know what to run. If you don't want to run a Titan, then allow me to suggest Sunbracer Warlock or Gyrfalcon Hunter. I want to bring up some general tips for this dungeon as I feel it is essential to know these. The first tips are pretty self-explanatory, but please run 100 resilience and resistance mods. Having a 30% damage reduction for the entire run with resistance mods will make dying a lot harder, but not impossible. I'd highly recommend running arc resistance and concussive dampener to try and reduce the amount of damage that various enemies in this dungeon do, including the Boomer Knights, bosses, but most importantly, the moths. The next general tip is a really important tip to know for the solo, which is that the entire solo dungeon is a serious endurance, awareness, and ad management test. The two boss fights will need you to do roughly 6 to 7 damage phases, which will cause you to lose a lot of patience. But you need to check yourself because if you lose patience, you'll make some dumb mistakes and become the victim of stupid deaths. For awareness, you need to be ready for the moths, as 2 moths in this dungeon will kill you, so you need to pay attention to that. Now that that is out of the way, let's hop into the first encounter. So for encounter number 1, you can feel free to run whatever ad clear weapons you'd like. I ran a Witherhorde, SMG, and Eager Edge Sword and didn't really have any issues. But you could also run Vorpal Weapon Fusion Rifles, Rocket Launchers, and more. The main thing you need to pay attention to here is where the group of enemies are for the symbols and where the individual enemies are. Truth be told, some enemies can wander pretty far away from the area they spawn, so if you think you've killed all ads but there seems to be one alive still, check the general area and even in other areas to see if the ad maybe wandered off. Otherwise, there's not much else to this encounter. I'd highly recommend using your Sparrow to get back to the altar once you've killed the Hive Guardian for the buff, but I'm sure I didn't need to tell you that. For the jump puzzle, I'd highly recommend taking things slow, but not too slow. It's okay to go for most bubbles to keep your oxygen meter up as long as you aren't taking too much time to get to each bubble. For the few areas that do contain ads, you can run by them if you absolutely do not want to fight them, but otherwise they can be free ammo or super energy in case you need either or. The only major tip I can give for this area is to familiarize yourself with where to go in this underwater section before you attempt it solo, or else you'll probably wipe a lot. If you need a full walkthrough of the first puzzle section, check the description for my Ghost of the Deep guide. Arriving at the second encounter, I made some swaps in my loadout. I decided to run a blinding grenade launcher in my primary slot, a 1-2 punch shotgun as my secondary, and tractor cannon as my heavy, and I paired these weapons with syntheseps. Using a shotgun bonk damage strategy on a Solar Titan worked a lot better than I was expecting, and proved to put out impressive damage numbers. If you're not looking to do a bonk hammer build, then one option I found to be surprisingly effective was Legend of Acreus with 3 times Arc Surge, and if you're a Warlock, pairing that with the Fellwinter's Helm helmet. This allowed Acreus to hit for 2.6 million damage in a perfect damage phase, which is really good. For the lead up to the damage phase, you'll want to collect all 3 symbols at once, assuming you don't want to be in there for an hour. But if you find yourself dying a lot, then you can consider doing 1 or 2 symbols at a time. When damaging the boss, I popped my Hammer of Soul Super to get the boss's shields down, and to also refresh Roaring Flames, but make sure you don't kill all ads, as you need some to proc syntheseps. If you're running Acreus with a Catalyst, then 3 shots with Trench Barrel should take his shield down pretty easily. Other than that, there's nothing else that I can really think of in this fight. Remember to take this fight slowly and not make dumb decisions. If you're a Warlock, use Sunbracers for ads. If you're a Titan, use Bonk Hammer and Sunspots to clear ads, and if you're a Hunter, use Gyrfalcons to clear the room pretty easily. Finally, we are at the final boss fight. I'm going to be honest with you, this fight sucks. I tried to originally do it on a Sunbracer Warlock, but I found it to be a very long fight. As a Titan, it was a bit more bearable since you could constantly have Restoration up, and with the loadout I'm going to provide, you should do some great damage to the boss. For that loadout, I ran a Blinding Grenade Launcher, a Vorpal Weapon Fusion Rifle, and Xenophage. Blinding grenade launchers help a lot in this area, while the fusion rifle and xenophage prove to be great options when dealing with the bold yellow bar knights in the ritual circles and against the boss. When the boss fight came about, I'd once again pop Hammer of Soul to damage the boss, and then I'd make a quick swap to the Actium War Rig chest piece, then I'd damage the boss. I found the Xenophage and Actium War Rig strategy from Salted Greppo's run, so I tried it myself and it worked wonderfully. So I'd highly recommend you try it out. When it comes down to general tips in this dungeon, I found two really helpful tips. The two most lethal things in this boss fight are the moths that the boss spawn, and the boss itself. Even after running Arc Resistance and Concussive Dampener, I was dying really fast, but I have some tips to counter these two. When the boss does her arching moths move, you can go into the underwater section for a second, then come out, and once you're out, the moths won't track you. They'll still look like they're trying to aggro you, but they'll just target a different hive instead. For the boss, I found throwing a healing grenade on the deep side node when I used it to help me survive her attacks easier, and if you're a warlock, you can Phoenix dive into the deep side node, grab the node mid-air, and rather than sitting there doing the animation, you'll be able to run immediately after, which is also super helpful. If you're a hunter, you can try to go invis and grabbing it, but that's all you can really do. When it came down to the damage phase, I damaged from Oryx's chest, opening up with my Hammer of Soul, then swapping to Actium War Rig shortly after my super was up, then shooting the boss with Xenophage until I was out of ammo. I would then just repeat this process over and over again. Feel free to damage wherever you feel would be easier for you, I just found Oryx's chest more convenient. With the use of all these tips I covered in this guide, you should be able to get a relatively easy solo Ghost of the Deep clear. Well, I hope you found the guide helpful. I spent countless hours in the dungeon finding strategies to make this solo run a little bit easier for you. So if you did find something in this guide that helped you with your run, then please consider dropping a like and subscribing to my channel for more Destiny 2 content dropping weekly. Also, be sure to stop by my streams that happen right here on YouTube as I'm looking into streaming a lot more and would love to see you there and maybe try to get my community involved with some fun activities. Finally, follow me over on my social media platforms linked below. With that being said, I'm SniperKH, and I'm out. Good luck with gaming.